Today, I will be attempting one of Valheim's hardest challenges, PermaDeath. However, I can only do damage from range, meaning all of my regular playstyles are out, unfamiliar things are the new normal, and any small miscalculation could end this run in an instant. From this point forward, if I die, the entire playthrough is over. I can only use ranged weapons and only do damage from ranged, and that is going to present a bunch of interesting challenges. It's going to allow us to take a very different playpath than I would ever use, or than the average Valheim player will ever use. Even in the very beginning of this, there is going to be some odd challenges like, well, how do I get my first ranged weapon? Well, I can't make a spear because I need to kill a boar, so we'll get into that in just a second. We have a lot of weird tactics that we're going to have to use, and a lot of tricks that I have not gotten to use, but I am so excited to, and I'm so excited to share with you guys. The entire first section of this playthrough is going to be getting used to the problems that come with ranged only, learning how to deal with them, and prepping for the harder biomes. Luckily for us, Valheim is very forgiving in the meadows, fairly forgiving in the Black Forest, but it starts to get worse and worse the further you go up for ranged only challenge. Now the reason is because most of our ranged solutions until the Mistlands consist of pierce damage, and the further you go into the game, the more things that are resistant to pierce and the more ways that you have to try and get around it. Now we will have some options. We will have ooze bombs, we will have magic staffs, we will have all sorts of stuff that we can use throughout the playthrough, but starting out we need to at least get a spear, as we can use it as long as we only throw it. We can also use anything else that does damage for us if we really want to. If we were to tame something and it were to kill something, that's fine. If we were to summon something and it were to kill something, that's fine. Or if we were to place something and it were to kill something, that's fine. As long as I am not doing melee damage, we are good. So the first little bit of this, we're going to try and spend as much time as we can being creative, finding ways to deal with these problems, and getting used to the playthrough itself, as well as trying to get the skills up that matter. We are going to need really high bow skill for this playthrough, we'll need really high spear skill for this playthrough, and eventually we will need very high magic skill for this playthrough. So we're going to try and start working on that as much as we possibly can, but in order to do that, we're going to need a spear. So my plan right now, let's get a campfire ready, drop it under a boar, see if it can drop us some leather scraps, and see if we can use that to get our first spear. And hopefully, I can remember to not stab anything with it and to only throw. Otherwise, this is going to be a rough day. Luckily for me, the campfire trick on the boar worked like a charm, and we now have our flint spear, which is great because spears level very quickly. Now that's normally because you can hit with them, which we can't do, but they still should level fairly quickly, and this is now our gateway into getting a bow, which if you guys don't know, bow skill raises your draw speed. Also having the quicker draw makes it take less stamina overall to get the bow fully pulled back, so if we can get that up early game, I would absolutely love to do so. Pretty quickly with our spear, we were able to get a lot more leather scraps and deer hide, which is going to allow us to get our bow fairly quickly. I normally am not a huge fan of the crude bow, I normally just like to go straight for the fine wood bow, but because it's ranged only, I really don't get a choice right now. That being said, because I wanted to level my bow skill, I spent a ton of time hunting absolutely everything and going full loot goblin mode trying to grab as many things as possible. All the mushrooms, all the raspberries, as much deer hide and boar hide as I could, just stacking up as many things at base as I could. Now that worked out great because we can build the tanning rack early, we can build the chopping block, and we can get our stuff upgraded, as well as we can build a little bit more stuff in the future and save up meat for better food once we get our cauldron. But that also means I have the trophies for Eikthyr, and whenever I'm ready to do it, we can, which means we're going to do it very soon. But I did want to say real quick that one of the things that I learned from the meadows, and one of the things that I knew I would have to take into account for the rest of the challenge, was that movement speed was also very important here. Bogwitch, Ratatosk mead, and the Lightfoot mead that you can get, as well as considering light armor sets over the heavy that I normally go with, might be a really important thing. That is because while being ranged means that you obviously are trying to do as much damage as you can possibly before anything gets to you, once something does get to you, it's very hard to fight it, especially with low bow skill. So the more I have the ability to get away from things, to get myself out of being in a pack or getting stuck around a whole bunch of things, the better chance I have at survival if we get ourselves into any sticky situations. So we should just keep that in mind. I started to notice it in the meadows, but we'll definitely have more moments where we notice it soon. But for right now, let's get over to Eikthyr, let's toss these deer trophies on the altar, and let's kill this deer. with a first stunning fire arrow and a couple of extra shots that took Eikthyre's health down a third of the way right off rip. This was honestly a super easy fight, as probably all of you would have expected. But again, this gives me the vibe for what I should be using and shouldn't be using during some of these slightly more chaotic battles. And what I learned from this, as well as what I've learned so far, is it's kind of hard to control the spear. I did use it for a little bit, but I also just went back to bow after using it. The reason is because if you throw the spear, pick it up, and then try and throw it again too quickly, you end up just kicking something. Which, again, while it's not a big deal, as I've kicked a few things so far trying to do this, including Eikthyre, it's something that I do not want to get in the habit of, because I don't want to feel like I'm doing too much damage from not a ranged perspective, because every single damage amount is supposed to be coming from ranged. But what that really means is spear is just going to have to be a backup. I have to remember that I can just throw it, and if I start forgetting more and more, I may just have to take it out of my hotbar and stick to a bow until I get to magic. But that being said, Eikthyre is up on the altar, we know where a black forest is, and we have a couple ideas of where crypts and stuff could be, so let's get out there and start doing it. However, I will say the black forest does have a few things to watch out for. Bears are quite resistant to pierce, and so are skeletons, so while we could still pretty easily get through a dungeon with just a bow, we may have to back up to our spear a little bit at some points, and we should probably just avoid bears at all costs. After the first boss fight, I headed to a nice flat area that I had seen that I wanted to build a small base in. I cooked up some food and I got some storage ready to head into the Black Forest. And the first journey into the Black Forest was honestly about as good as I could have asked for. I got all the core wood I needed for a fine wood bow, got a little bit of metal from one of the Great Orf Towers, found the other location, and then found a troll to help me get fine wood, so I didn't even have to smelt metal before getting my fine wood bow. This is going to allow me to deal with those mobs that are a bit more pierce resistant, just slightly easier, and also give me a bit more armor with our troll hide, meaning that right now, if I were to get maybe a bronze spear and my fine wood bow upgraded, we would pretty much be ready for Elder, and Elder looks like it might just be close enough to run to, which means we may be getting off to a phenomenal start and getting through this part of the game really quickly. But we still need to be focusing on the couple small things that I mentioned, getting our bow skill up and getting used to this ranged only challenge, because right as soon as we kill Elder, we start getting to a point in the game where it gets a bit more unforgiving. While my start into the Black Forest was about as good as I could have asked for, the problem with this Black Forest right next to my base was it was very, very small. There was maybe one copper node, a few tin nodes, and nothing else to really explore, meaning if I wanted to get copper and tin and actually smelt it, I would probably need to go to another Black Forest. And then the thought crossed my mind, what if I just made the food and made everything else? I have a level 2 fine wood bow, I have a level 2 spear, and I could just head over towards Elder. And you know, maybe if I feel ready when I get there, I can go ahead and kill Elder as well, but I should also be able to grab cores and bring them back to this base so I can make portals and smelters, meaning that we may just rush Elder before I even have any bronze done or anything like that, just because of how simply close it seemed to be. Heading over there, there were enough Great Orf nests for us to get all of the seeds to summon Elder, and so I just decided to set up a base, mark out some of the burial chambers around us, and say, you know what, we'll just do those after Elder. So we're going to go ahead and kill Elder, we're going to go ahead and grab as many cores as we can, and then we're going to go ahead and head back to base. But rushing Elder like this, while it is slightly dangerous, will put us pretty far into the progression, and the only thing that it really dangers us with is the raids that could come from it. Much like Eikthyre, Elder is very much made to be fought with a bow. It's very much made to be fought at ranged, and I would probably do it this way in a normal playthrough, which makes these first two bosses so much easier, and it switches up so much more when we get into the next biome, because Bone Mass is super resistant to pierce. But for right now, I fought the Elder fight the way you normally would. I tried out the ranged spear a little bit, and while it was okay, it was much worse than the bow, and the bow was just so much easier to use, and again, it's what you'd most of the time use for this fight. But it did bring up one thing that I realized, is that long journeys like this and or boss fights are just going to need so many arrows. We're going to need such a good process for getting arrows. We're going to need such a good process for getting every part of the arrows. We need a feather farm somehow, we need tons of wood at all times, and we need to figure out which arrows we have best and have literally thousands of them on hand, or else it could end up being the thing that gets us killed. Because if the spear's not doing enough damage, or we don't even make some of the later spears because they're not viable enough as weapons, then we may get stuck in a situation where we literally have no available way to do damage, which is just kind of a problem. So that's the only thing this fight kind of brought to my attention, is the insane amount of arrows we were going to need for this. But I think you guys could probably assume from a ranged only challenge that we would probably need thousands of arrows. With that though, Elder is down, we can get our swamp key and we can head back to base and actually do some of the Black Forest progression that we skipped, and then we can move to the swamp. Before going back to base though, I want to go grab a bunch of cores because really the tiny Black Forest around our base didn't have anything, and we're still on the same island as Elder, so not only can we pick up the cores from our portal, but we need to bring back a whole bunch if we don't have a portal back to over here. But then we're going to use my new favorite method of getting copper. Now when I played hardest settings as well as pretty much every other playthrough that I've ever done, people always complain that they don't like that I just break the top of the copper node and dip. And while people's methods for breaking copper vary from skimming the very top of it to using a hoe to level the ground around it to completely digging the entire thing out, I have found that digging the entire thing out is most of the time actually worth it. While you can't get it to get a solid break like silver, if you do get a decent amount of it dug out, depending on how far it is in the ground, you can still get like half of it to break with no effort. And while it's probably faster to get copper with a troll, if you're not finding a troll anywhere or you have a copper node that's in a very small Black Forest, probably the best way to do it is to mine out around it. So we're going to do this, we're going to mine the entire thing out, and hopefully that will be enough to at least get us some basic stuff. We can get our bronze axe, we can get a bronze spear, and we can make a couple tools that we might be missing since we rushed Elder so fast. Hell yeah. Most satisfying copper break ever. Even if it wasn't the whole node, I will take that for sure. This one copper node yielded me almost 150 copper, which is really, really good. Now, it did take a really long time to do. I'm not going to lie about that, but the more that I do this, the more that I find I am better at picking ones that are easily breakable, as this one was pretty much completely in the ground. But, as I said, you can always have a troll help you with it as well. We now have 150 copper to get back to base, which we're just going to try and, just scoot back to base as quickly as we can. We'll use our new cores to get all of it smelted up. We'll use the stone that we have to probably store at base until we start building with stone, and then we might head out to the swamp once we get a little bit of our stuff smelted up, but while we're still waiting for the rest of it to finish. We still need fermenters, we still need a lot of stuff other than tools, things that we need to build in the base, forge upgrades, and a bit of extra to take with us if we decide to move our base, which we probably will. So I think that doing a copper node like this, at least at the beginning of your Black Forest, is probably one of the most efficient things you can do just to give you a good boost of copper and get you into the progression pretty quickly. With all that copper, I needed a ton of wood to turn into coal so that I could get my stuff smelted up. However, I did something that I did not mean to do, but it will probably not be the last time that this happens. I whipped out my spear and out of pure reaction, stabbed a grayling in the head. Now, luckily for me, it did not kill him, but my idea right now is that every time I accidentally attack something in a way that I don't mean to, I'll either throw that thing's stuff on the ground, that way I don't get the benefit of, having killed it, or I can go ahead and trap it in my base as a little memento to one, that I shouldn't be hitting those things, and two, that if I do accidentally do it, that we do something about it, and we try not to hit them not ranged. So, that's a little thing, but if you guys are wondering why there's a grayling trapped in a cage outside my base, and if a couple more join him, where those came from, that's why we're doing that, because I don't feel right killing them if I've accidentally stabbed them in the face, and I am going to try and keep my spear out of my hotbar from now on, so I have to actually think about it, and think about pulling it out, so that I can't just instantly stab with it. Anyways, now I have my forge, I got a bronze axe made, and I have more bronze stuff on the way. I have a fine wood bow, and I have a set of portals to equip myself with. So we're going to head back to the Black Forest where we killed Elder at, and we are going to see how many cores we can get. We need a ton to help us smelt up that much copper and the tin to go with it, as well as we're about to head into the swamp, which means that we will need it for iron as well. So, while we might not use them all at this base, as I do plan to move pretty soon, we want to go back over there and grab as much Black Forest stuff as we can before we leave this island. And I was not disappointed, because not only did I find a lot of the stuff that I needed, but I found one of the rarest things in Valheim that I had only found one time previous to this point. And I feel like bow only might be the play for my regular playthroughs. I'm doing so much more damage like this. I'm getting through stuff so much faster like this as well. Oh my god, there's so many things there. No way! Dude, this is the second time I found one of these. Hold on. Skeleton, stop. 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 Okay, dude. Let's go. Well, I just said I wanted a Rocky, I guess. Now, if you don't know what this is or even what a Rocky is, that's okay, trust me. There are plenty of people who play Valheim and will probably never come across one. But the way that it works is it is a rock instead of a stone that you can pick up and put a charcoal face on. If you have more than one of them next to each other, then they will breed and make more rocks, or they'll make stones, not more rocks, not the ones that you can put the face on, but they'll kind of give you a little passive stone farm. And earlier this year, Valheim added the possibility of finding this point of interest that has 22 of them outside of it. And not only did we find this one, but we also found a 23rd one on the way back to some of the areas that we had marked out, which is something that also happened last time I found one of these. And again, while this isn't something that's going to really change the playthrough, it is really fun. It's great little base decoration, especially with this many of them. I'll be able to name them after all the people that were there on stream, or let them give them names, hide them all around the base, and maybe we'll get some free stone out of the deal, as well as a good time. But like I said, that Mother Rock point of interest, there's only one of them per world. They work like a trader where there's multiple possible locations, but the second you find one of them, all of the other locations cease to give you the opportunity to find it, meaning you only have one per world. It doesn't show up on the map like a trader, and they can be kind of hard to find. And like I said, there's a lot of people who have never seen them in their world, so I'm pretty happy that we got to find one on this playthrough. I then spent a solid hour or two trying to get the cores for the smelter area that I wanted. As I have found with a lot of playthroughs recently, the longer and harder I expect the playthrough to be, the more time I have to spend early game setting up. To me, this permadeath seems like one of the easier gear restriction ones that I could do, but it's still a permadeath and it's still gear restricted, which makes it pretty damn hard compared to a normal Valheim playthrough. So I want 3 smelters, 3 kilns, a ton of wood stacked up, and once I had it, stuff was going insanely fast. We had more bronze making, we had a cultivator, we'll need a very nice farm if we want constant food, and we'll need some decent way to get a lot of wood, because I've already been absolutely ripping through arrows going through these dungeons. Now that being said, my bow skill is going up quite a lot, which is exactly what I wanted from this early phase, but as we move into the swamp, some of the stuff in there will not take so kindly or not go so easily if I'm fighting them with just a bow, which might make some of our time a little bit harder. But we're not quite there yet. I still need a storage area, I still need to finish getting all of this stuff smelted, even though I have the smelter area done, and I need a couple more things for more sets of portals, as when I leave this base I plan to leave a portal here and bring everything else that I need with me to make a bunch of portal sets, put all my metal in a new base, and keep exploring past that. After having that much base progress, I decided it was time to head out towards the swamp. Now, I had found a pretty small swamp right on the edge of the Black Forest where we killed Elder at, and while it wasn't enough, it was the direction that I decided to head off in. Now, around this swamp, as well as another very small one that I found, we found 2 really cool small islands that kind of gave me the idea, maybe I should build my base on an island, but we'll come back to that idea later. For now, we continued sailing past the tiny swamps up to one that looked much more promising, and this one, even just on the shore, I could see tons of swamp crypts. And while we won't need a ton for this first run, because we will just need to grab enough for a bigger boat and an iron pickaxe, as well as possibly a hunter's bow, it will be nice, as that means my next run will be full of iron, as I can bring back a lot more on that bigger boat. There's also a Surtling core spawner here, so if we want to set up a Surtling farm, which honestly probably would have helped us in the amount of time we just spent with the course, but we'll gloss over that, if we want to not have to grind the Black Forest so much in the future for stuff like a smelting area or for a ton of different portals. And if I plan on living on an island, trust me, we're going to need a lot of portals. But for right now, let's see how much we can get from these first couple swamp crypts. These first swamp crypts honestly did not treat me too nicely. Now, the more I got into this swamp, the more I could see that there was an absolutely ridiculous amount of them, so I would probably get some decent ones in the future. But I could not get, the entire time I was mining and going through these swamp crypts, the idea of building on one of those tiny islands out of my head. I really wanted to do it. I had thought about an island base for this playthrough, and then when presented with those, there was no way that I couldn't do it. So what I decided to do instead was, instead of trying to get a ton of iron, take it all the way back to the main base, smelt it up and turn it into a better boat, why don't I just build at one of these small islands real quick, and then I will not have to take the iron nearly as far. So I ended up grabbing 2 iron so that I would be able to get a stone cutter and build it out of stone, with the plan that in a little bit, after I get a base built here and my smelting area moved, as well as the rest of my metals, that I would be able to then use this spot to smelt and not have to move the iron nearly as far, not only for this run, but for future ones. So I'm going back to one of those tiny islands. I need to smelt up the 2 iron that I have so I can build a stone cutter, and we're going to start construction of probably one of my favorite bases I've ever made in one of these permadeath playthroughs. Getting the 2 iron smelted over here was very easy work, but what I wanted to do for this base design was definitely not, and it was also definitely not cheap. It was going to be a ton of stone. Not only did I want to build an island base, but I wanted to build a circular island base. Now, that in Valheim or any game that builds with squares comes with some challenges, but I will show you guys how we deal with those along the way. Now, luckily for me, starting off with this base, I had a good bit of stone still saved up over at where we got a bunch of copper at earlier, but not only was I building this out of stone, I was also raising the ground up on this island to keep it out of the altitude where waves are a problem and where they just kind of flood your base every once in a while. And it will probably be a problem for the bottom half of our base, but that will not come for quite a long time, as this base is going to probably be in construction till the end of the playthrough. Now, the biggest thing that comes with building a stone foundation that is circular, or any foundation out of anything that's circular, is the fact that because we are building it out of square units, we will have a gap on both sides. That's just how circles work. So what we want to do instead is build a central platform where there are just tiny gaps on the outside edges and then fill those in with more stone. So we started working on it. Now, this is something that I've been working with a lot recently, as you guys will see in the community series, which is something that will be coming out very soon. Building with circles is something that I've been trying to do more, as it's really fun and it makes for some really cool builds. But again, it does take a lot of time, and it does make a couple interesting challenges like the roof that we'll get to later that can definitely make it a little bit harder. The other thing we also got done was, for right now, I felt like I just had the Rockies sitting in a chest, and I can't be doing that, so I placed them all on the ground around our base, because why not? Now, we'll have to pick these up and move them at some point, but honestly, everyone on stream wanted to see what they looked like, and a couple of people had never seen one placed, so we had to throw a bunch of them down real quick. That being said, if you guys want to see any of these fun moments, or anything like the building process, or any certain moment that you want to go back and see as it happened live, all of the VODs are in a playlist down in the description, so please go check those out if you guys want to. Every single bit of this was streamed, and you guys can go watch all the progress live as we did it, like the building and stuff like that. But I spent pretty much the rest of the stream building. I spent so much time getting stone, so much time building, but when I get back tomorrow, I promise you guys, oh, it was worth it, because we are going to turn this base again into one of my favorite bases I've ever had in a playthrough, and definitely one of my favorite bases that I've ever had in one of these permadeaths. The next day on stream, I was pretty determined that not only was I going to finish this base, but I was going to get everything moved over here. Now, when I say finish, I don't mean fully furnished and looking beautiful, but usable as our new base. I had a really interesting idea for a smelter design that was inside the base walls of this, but I do think it will mess with the structural support of the tower itself a little bit, so we'll have to see if we can actually keep it or not. The idea for the tower itself, though, is a multi-layered, like, lighthouse kind of vibe that is a circular tower on this one island. We'll see if we can get it to work, and then we'll build more layers of it out and around for stuff like a garden and outside areas, but we'll do that as we get further into the playthrough. Because the inside is so small, I decided on stairs on the outside, and I think the idea for how big I want to go with this is about 3 or 4 of these nice layers tall, with pillars going up the middle to hopefully support stuff like a hearth on a higher level. That way I don't have to put everything on the bottom level, but we'll get to that in a little bit, because right now, in order to keep building what I need to build, I want to make that my actual main base, which means we are bringing all of the metal, all of the stuff for a forge, and all of the heavy things from this base that we cannot portal over there, over by boat for what might be our last boat departing from this island for quite a while. Getting back to our island, we now have a bunch of smelted and unsmelted copper that we brought with us, and a bit of bronze that we can use for a few other things. We did leave a little bit of stuff at that other base, but most of it is now here with us, so we'll unload the boat in just a minute. When going back to building the base, I wanted to determine the very max height, and the way that I did that was how high could I get a hearth? And the answer was honestly a lot higher than I expected. The reason is, though, is because I want my rested area and my bedroom on the very top level, which means however high I can put a hearth pretty much determines how high this base is going to be able to be. And like I said, it's a lot taller than I expected. Going back to base to grab some more stuff and harvest the farm, we had our first raid, a troll raid. Nothing too scary if I'm prepared with arrows, but something that I think that that island will also offer us, as I'm now playing with raids during most of these challenges, which is something I used to not do. We should be able to pretty much spawn block the entire tiny islands around us, and then everything else will be water, and we shouldn't really have a problem with the raids. But the raid was not the only thing that happened. We also had a very odd moment with the boat that I've been noticing more and more with Valheim the more I play it. Oh, all the stuff is still on the boat. What the fuck just happened? What was that? Why did the boat just do that? Not super important, but I've been seeing that happen more and more often recently, I feel like. So I was just wondering if that's something that a lot of other people have been experiencing too. Anyways, back to building the base. We have to finish our top layer. We will actually get the hearth centered how it's supposed to be rather than like balancing on top of just 2 of the pillars. And then we will go to the probably the hardest part of building a circular base, the roof. The roof is probably going to be a little bit more difficult than a normal roof, but I think because the base is fairly small that the support for it shouldn't be too bad. We have stone pillars going up the center, and then there will be a bunch of other things that I want to do. But for the main structure of the base, that will probably be it. Now, I have almost fallen off this base or down that middle section a few times, which we need to be very, very careful of. But otherwise, I think that once this entire part of the base is done, that we'll go back, we'll get some more iron from the swamp, and we'll let that smelt while we are doing everything else that we need to be doing. In the meantime, though, every time I've gone back to the other base to get resources, get wood, get stone, I have been replanting our crops and gathering our honey. So by the time we actually do go back to the swamp, we should have a bunch of food ready for us. Getting the rest of the base done was mostly just the roof and finishing off some of where the rooms were going to be and figuring out where each room was going to be, where the storage was, where the cooking stations were going to be, where the comfort room was going to be, and how it was going to come together, and then finishing up the bottom layer with some random stuff. The roof was honestly kind of a pain in the butt, but like I said, I think I picked the right dimensions for the tower to where it would be just a little bit easier. We put a mead kettle down below just for now in case we want to make poison meads for when we head back to the swamp very soon, and we established that layer right under our comfort area, which the comfort area is the top, so the third layer of the tower, as our cooking station. Now, this is going to be a little weird because the smoke is probably going to cause me some small problems, but I was able to enclose most of it to just be able to just hang out up there and just kind of get stuck in the ceiling and then dissipate, which means we should be okay. We might not be able to have all 3 hearths going all the time, but we should be okay for most of the time. So we now have a comfort area, we've got the main base structure done, and we are headed to the swamp to go grab the actual amount of iron that we will need and start progressing it, because once we get all of our iron set up and ready, we are literally going to head straight into the mountains since we're skipping bone mass. Because this was probably my last swamp run for quite a while, what I decided to do instead was come back with a little bit more food and a little bit better prepared. Now, we will need a better boat here in just a little bit, but we can handle some of that over here or bring it back to base. For right now, what I decided to do was leave a portal at the swamp or near the swamp, come back to base, get some meads and food so I would be able to have a really good run, and then set off into the swamp after swamp crypts, getting as much iron as we can, because if we get enough iron on this run, we can get it back in one of the long ships, or even if we completely fill the carve, we can make our iron gear, make a frost resist mead, make our hunter's bow, and absolutely head straight for the mountains, leaving bone mass in the dust for right now at least. We will have to come back and kill bone mass at some point, but honestly, bone mass offers the most difficult raid and the one that would most likely kill us at any point in this playthrough, especially since stuff can't really spawn at our base right now, and it would mean that even if we were going to kill bone mass, that we would use frost arrows for it, which means that we would have to go into the mountains anyways, so I figure we'd just skip it for now. But I'm going to grab as much iron as I can, and if it's enough, I already have a mountain picked out. That is probably the biggest mountain I have ever seen in Valheim. From this first swamp crypt, I ended up with 38 iron, and while that's not enough at all, we still have plenty more marked out and that I can see in the distance, but I decided to head back with just this. The idea was I could make a hunter's bow and I could make the better boat, and then since our base is so close, we can just come right back and leave the portal here. We won't even have to sail back, we can just teleport back with the boat, drop it in the water, and keep going when we come back. So we're going to take this first 38 iron back to base, we'll get it smelted up, turn it into a boat and a hunter's bow, make some more arrows and some food, and we will head right back up here. It is technically 2 runs, but it is a lot more of an efficient way to do this. Plus, the hunter's bow will do a bit more damage and keep me just a tiny bit safer. Waiting for the iron to smelt, I did mess with the smelting area a little bit and I started to build the storage area. However, there was a very terrifying base mishap where in order to put the smelter back, because of building the base completely on top of them, I had to destroy a decent amount of the supports that would hold up the entire section of the base all the way up to the roof, and that was a little bit terrifying, but it ended up being okay. We had to alter the smelting area a good bit. We started building the storage area, which hopefully will be enough storage because otherwise I don't really know what I would do. I can't really just build another layer, and then we use the wood that we were gathering to both make chests and to start smelting the iron, but it was a decent little base improvement day for the rest of the day. Now, previously, the stream had actually ended because, well, my internet went out, but we were back. We had finished the entire storage area, which took quite a long time to sort through, continue to get resources to fill certain parts of it that I knew I would need. And the idea right now is that I can fill these shelves above them with either more chests for each category that needs them, keeping them within the category. So if we need more meat, we'll just put more chests above the meat sign and we'll just have those. But if we don't need more spots, like the honey one or something else like that, then we could probably go ahead and start to like put some decorations on those shelves for later, as I want to make the base look nice. I also, through this process, got one of the funniest Valheim jump scares I've ever gotten for some reason. Oh, Jesus Christ. that actually kind of scared me. After a random little tree jump scare, though, we had our hunter's bow, we crafted up another phantom floating boat, which I still don't know why that's been happening recently, but we have our longship now, and I headed back for another run in the swamp. Now, this run, the goal at the beginning was just slightly different. The idea was to run and mark every single swamp crypt, every Surtling core spawner, every little thing that I could find, and then come back through and do the parts that I needed, and we could leave the rest up here in case I needed more later, but I really shouldn't need that much iron for this run. The iron you would need for Crom, the iron you would need for the silver sword, and the iron you would need for any other weapons you don't need. Now, I might need it for like the Carpus gear, but really that's not going to be too much of it. We'll need it for our iron gear, we'll need it for the Carpus gear, and we should be pretty good after that. So I don't even know if we will have to do all of the swamp crypts over here, but we are going to mark all of them out. We're going to see what all this swamp has to offer us. We will do a few of them, and then we will bring the boat over here and take some of it back, which should be our last iron run before we head to the mountains. Definitely this time, for sure. And like I said, we have one of the craziest mountains I've ever seen. I'm actually considering at this point in time, if we beat this permadeath, that why not just keep building on this world? I mean, we have a beautiful mountain, we have one of my favorite bases I've ever done. Why not, when we beat this permadeath, just keep going? Why not just keep doing this like we did with our first ever permadeath and do some cool builds in it as well? I mean, yeah, it would suck if we lost it after we had already finished the game, but it might not be a bad idea if we want some awesome builds, because this is still one of the coolest seeds I've gotten the opportunity to build in. I will say, this swamp was absolutely packed with swamp crypts, and they were not bad ones. They were ones that provided a lot of stuff, a lot of tradables, a lot of iron, a lot of chains, and a lot of ancient bark. All stuff that I needed. Now, we did run into a couple pretty dangerous scenarios where I, didn't have a poison meat and came face to face with the blob, but other than that, it was a pretty good time. The hunter's bow made it a lot easier to get through this, because not only does it do a little bit more damage, but also sniping something from far away that can't see you will not trigger the things around it nearly as often, as it still does make some noise, but not nearly as much as a normal bow would. This means that we can make a small hole, and if not everything in that room is aggroed, we can just start shooting into it and killing everything and getting that backstab damage that you wouldn't normally get, which is why I love the hunter's bow. And it honestly makes me think I should maybe use it a little bit more often. Inside some of these swamp crypts, we got an absolute ton of iron. We also got the bone mass location, and like I said, we got a lot of tradables and stuff, which made this a really good run, and we only had to do like 4 of the 10 swamp crypts that I found, meaning that if we do end up needing more later down the line, we will easily be able to come back here. Not to mention there is more than one more swamp around us that looks like it has swamp crypts as well, meaning I'm pretty sure we're set on iron for the rest of the playthrough, if at any point we need to go get more. But with all that iron collected, and I will spare you guys most of the details of it because all of us know how an iron run go, and if you don't know how an iron run goes, you're not missing much. Heading back though, it was a bit stormy, and it made me think if I was going to head into the mountains really soon, it might not be a bad idea to go serpent hunting one of these nights, just to see if we could get some cooked serpent meat and serpent stew, as that would make us a lot safer in the mountains. This iron run in total yielded me about 175 iron, which is definitely enough to get a full set of armor, upgrade the hunter's bow a little bit, and make any other small things like forge upgrades that I might need going forward into the mountains. I also got the only other thing I needed for the mountains. As soon as I left the swamp, because it was about to be nighttime and because it was still raining, we got a serpent, which is perfect. That is exactly what we wanted. We still had poison arrows from all of the crypts, which made it really, really easy to kill, and the only thing that really did against us meant that it died in the water way out far away from us, which means there was no chance for me to jump in the water and pick up anything like the scales or the trophy if it dropped one. But we have the serpent meat, we can make the decent food, we can make the decent armor, and honestly, while that iron's smelting, I might just go ahead and set up that next portal, because I am ready to get over to this mountain, not only to show you guys the ridiculousness and scale of it and check it out for myself, but also just to progress the mountains. The Draugr Fang is a phenomenal bow that I'm excited for, and after the mountains mountains, we might even push magic from the Mistlands, which again would be a really odd skip due to us being in permadeath, but I might just have to try it. We have a lot of difficult stuff coming up, and this is where the playthrough starts to switch from being a very easy thing that almost everyone has experienced, where the bow doesn't really affect us too much, to where the bow will really start to change things once we move into the mountains and plains, and where we might have to take some more risky progression skips in order to even give us a fighting chance. While I was waiting for the iron to smelt, I was running around the swamp grabbing some more resources and doing the same thing in the meadows, just grabbing as much food and stuff as I could, looking for turnips, just doing all the different small things, which by the way, I did find turnips and get them planted. But besides that point, there was a really interesting conversation going on in chat that it kind of did make me think about taking a different approach. Somebody mentioned, why would I not use the root set? Now, there's a couple reasons why I wouldn't use the root set. The number one is I'm not used to having that light of armor, and I will be very unused to what damage I can take and what damage I have to avoid, or what things I should be fighting and what things I should be running from. However, the root harness does give us an extra bow skill bonus, which would make us not only shoot faster but do more damage, and that paired with wolf sight, which is a trinket in the mountains, would give us even more, putting us at an insane skill buff just for using our bow and just for using our trinket and wearing a certain armor set. And while it's not something that I'm necessarily sold on yet, I'm gonna think about it, and if we're running around the swamp and we see abominations, we're gonna try and lure them into some Surtling core spawners and get them killed. That way, if we do decide to go for the root set later, we already have the stuff for it. With all of that iron I brought back, I was gearing up, honestly, a lot faster than I imagined. This smelting area was working great. We already had our hunter bow, so all I have to do is just upgrade that a couple times, and we are slamming on the armor as fast as I possibly can. We have a frost mead going. We've got food that we're about to make as well. Not just the serpent stuff, but also regular food that's a bit more sustainable. And I've already got my plan for the mountain, as well as a portal at the base of it. Now, the mountain is really close to our altar base. That's why I was able to run a portal to the base of it. But I promise you guys, you will see why this mountain's crazy, but you really won't see everything until we come to pick up the silver later, because again, this is by far one of the tallest mountains I have ever seen, and I purely came over here just out of curiosity because I saw it from my other base, how insanely awesome it was. But hopefully the size of it and stuff doesn't mean that it's difficult to find silver or anything like that. We need tons of frost glands for frost arrows as we enter the mountain, we need a bunch of wolf meat and pelt for food and stuff like that, and we need quite a ridiculous amount of silver. Now, not the normal ridiculous amount, because we don't need to make the silver sword, which is going to save us quite a bit, but I can make the fang spear and I can make the Draugr fang. I'll do fully upgraded silver gear, and I will need, like I said, a ton of frost arrows. But we've got a good couple frost meads, so let's go over how we're going to find silver in the mountain. Well, I've noticed this for a long time. Last permadeath was the first time I really got to test a theory that I've always had about silver, and it seemed to work really well, which is that once you start seeing golems, obsidian, and or drakes, or all of the above, and you find a nice flat spot that has dimples in the snow, you are most likely standing on top of silver. Now, there are some small dimpled areas that normally don't have it, and this is very much a pattern that is not always going to show up, but if you do follow this idea of following a pattern like this, you will find it most of the time, and that is exactly what we're going to follow today. As we head up the mountain, we're going to look for those exact types of areas, try and keep ourselves alive, and hope we get a little bit of luck with our pattern-based idea of how we can find silver. In less than 3 minutes of entering the mountain and applying our frost mead, which is the timer I'm using to tell how long it took, we found silver using this method on the very first try. We found a flat spot with dimples. It was up above where we were finding drake, stone golems, and obsidian, which I'm using those as a reference for the altitude that you're at on the mountain. And it was a nice big flat area that as soon as we started mining, we were able to find silver. Now, I wasn't even fully prepped for this because I didn't have an iron pickaxe, so we had to go back to base to do that. But we were able to get it cleared out around it, break it in one nice solid hit, get 91 silver from it, and for now we will leave that in a chest and continue up the mountain to continue looking for stuff with our pattern-based idea. Now, this idea pretty much allows you to completely skip bone mass, which is why I'm doing it, but also because bone mass kind of sucks in most playthroughs that have raids on, and in this playthrough specifically because it's also not that fun of a fight with just a bow, so I will take it, and if you guys ever need a silver finding method, here you go. But we are headed back up the mountain to look for more, and also to see how ridiculously tall this mountain actually is. Once again, within less than a minute of digging in this new area, we found our silver node, which one kind of helps me think in my head that I'm not insane for the silver finding method, and also that it is actually fairly effective. But the other thing that we got along with the nice luck that came with finding the silver node is it wasn't a silver node, it was silver nodes. There was 2 of them stacked inside of each other at this location, which while that can be a pain in the butt because it can make it kind of hard to get that nice solid break, we even got lucky with that, allowing them to, while they were 2 seconds separate breaks break pretty easily, even though one of them was stuck inside of a rock. Now this yielded us over 160 silver, our other one yielded us over 90, which means we definitely have enough silver total, but I still want to look for dragon eggs, I still want to look more on the mountain, and if I do find more silver, there's no reason to not at least mark it, if not mine it. I still need to get obsidian, I still need frost glands, and I still definitely need wolf hide. So we still have a lot of things to go do and run around and do on this mountain, but for right now, I think most of our silver problems from literally the first like 20 minutes of being on the mountain are pretty much taken care of. And while we still have a bunch of exploration to do in this mountain left, I do want to get a bunch of this stuff into a cart and down to the water where I can get it with a boat, for reasons that I'll explain in just a second. Now getting this down with a cart could be something interesting because this is quite the steep mountain, but we're just taking the silver and the dragon egg that I found and anything else that we find on the way down. I'm going to take all of this stone back to base to build with, stack it up in our chests, and then we'll take this cart down the mountain. Now again, pretty steep. The other thing that I'm not 100% sure of is where the closest water is at or how to get to it by boat. If there is an island blocking or something like that, or we have to go through some thin river that I haven't seen yet on my map, we may have a bit of a problem, or we may have to run this cart a lot further than we want to. But for right now, the cart is pretty much at the bottom of the mountain. We still will leave a portal over here. My idea is just I could keep exploring with this gear, or I could make my silver gear and Draugr and then come back and keep exploring the same mountain. Either way, I have to do exploring, and either way, I will have to do the same amount of harvesting I've done now, but I just have to pick when I do the grinding to wait for the wood to smelt into coal and for the silver to smelt into gear. So I figure it's probably a bit smarter to do my mountain exploration with as much gear as I can possibly have. So let's go back to base, let's gear up for a journey, and let's get over here to pick this silver up, as well as expose the ocean side view of this mountain, which is something ridiculous. It's something like I have never seen before, and oh my god, are we gonna have to build a base here at some point. It really didn't take too long to get the food and stuff geared for this journey because I didn't use most of what I had planned to use on my journey to the mountains because my journey to the mountains was really fast. Now my boat is in the swamp, so we're headed over there to grab it, but we are purposely heading out at night into the sunset for us to be able to hopefully find a serpent or two on our way there because that is the only food item we're kind of running out of, and that's really just because we didn't get too much from our only serpent earlier. And our prayers were answered pretty quickly as we did get a serpent in the night, and though it was only a single one, we got our stuff from it. We'll be able to make more food when we get back to base. Though I don't have a portal right now, so we're going to just have to make it to the base of the mountain where we have our portal set up by altar and head back from there. Now, once on the way there, I stopped at an island that I thought was the base of the mountain, just to realize that I was nowhere near it. And I was very confused, looking for the cart, looking for my portal, couldn't find anything, just for me to open my map and realize I was still a good bit away. But that did make me realize, looking at my map, that if I didn't find a little river or inlet to the lake that I had the cart on the shore of soon, we were going to have to go all the way around the island, almost back to our original altar base, and figure out how to get the silver there. And while this is a problem plaguing my mind, there was something much more interesting to me, as I've hyped it up a whole bunch, because there's not another mountain like this in Valheim. Holy crap, look at the side of this. Glad I didn't try and bring the cart down this side. Oh my god. Have you guys ever seen a mountain like this? Because I don't feel like I have, though I have one that was kind of similar. This one is so much taller and just seems so much more ridiculous at the fact that it literally touches the, ocean. Like, it is on the ocean. And you see that sometimes at the edge of the Ashlands, but that's pretty uncommon to see in the center of the map, especially with a mountain that is that ridiculously tall. Now, I was absolutely mesmerized by this. However, the moment was quickly ruined when I realized how ridiculously far I was going to have to be running this cart full of silver that did not want to move an inch all the way back to my boat because I had miscalculated where the water was at, and honestly, had I planned a little bit better, I probably could have just slid this cart down that steep side of the mountain and landed the cart pretty much at my boat. So if we have to come back for another trip, we will do that, but for right now, we're going to struggle our way through a very thickly wooded area with a cart that does not want to move and see if we can get it back to the boat. The cart was taking so long, in fact, that I just decided to heavy walk everything back, throw it on the ground when I needed stamina, and just do it that way because it was going to be much faster. But I did leave some stuff in the cart, meaning we did have to go back and get it. I left a bunch of not nearly as heavy stuff from my inventory, as well as the dragon egg in the cart, because I knew I could carry that back and then break the cart, or break the cart over there and carry it all back at once. The cart still had more in it, though, than I could carry. It just wasn't the, thousands of pounds of silver that I had on me. So we got everything back to the boat. It took a lot longer than planned. It was not nearly as smooth as we planned, but we found a badass mountain, we have our silver, and the mountains really didn't take that long either way for us to get most of our progression, so I don't think there's really too much that we can complain about here. Returning back to base, man, I love the way this base looks, but not only do I love the way it looks, I love the way it functions, because as soon as we got back to base, we got a ground is shaking raid, and nothing happened. Now, we do still have a small island out in the distance that we will need to spawn block at some point, but for right now, we're not going to worry about it too much, because clearly what I have is working. Then it was time for a bit of a grind. We needed to smelt up as much metal as we could, we needed to get other stuff like guck for our Draugr, we needed to cook the food that we got on our journey, we got our Draugr not only crafted, but upgraded, and upgraded quite a bit. We started to use the stone from our silver hunting journey to expand the base to be a little bit bigger, as I will need it very soon. Also, trying to do the math for how to extend an already existing circle out of squares, not recommended, but it does work. We did find a little formula for it. Anyways, we also got our Drake helmet crafted and upgraded just a little bit, but we are already out of stuff to do without exploring, which means we head back up to the mountain, not to look for more silver, but we need wolf pelt, we need obsidian, we need wolf teeth, we need to go to the swamp at night to get some chains, and we need to start building up the rest of our gear set, as well as find modder and get some onion seeds to plant, because those are the things that we're still missing. And while that first journey brought us a ton of silver, because it went by so quick and because the mountain is so steep, we really didn't have to engage with much, and we didn't really get that many other resources because of it. Heading back up the mountain, I found my first frost cave of the playthrough. Now, there's nothing that I specifically need from here, but I could possibly find the modder location. However, bats with ranged only, not the move, not fun at all, and unfortunately for me, this frost cave had pretty much nothing that I needed in it, which meant we left it pretty quickly. Now, there was the Howling Cavern for Hilder's Quest up here as well, but again, not something that we really need. After hunting wolves for a bit and heading up the mountain further, I came back to base to see how much silver was smelted and was able to craft my silver chest piece, and my leg armor will be close behind. A bit more climbing and we are at the top of the mountain. Now, there's nothing really crazy up here, and honestly, it's kind of a pain in the butt to fight stuff up here because all the loot slides down the mountain, but it is really cool to see, and it did give me some ideas for what I could build up here later. On my way back down, it turned night, and I had the decision to either stay on the mountain and hunt for fenring, or go back to base. And while hunting for fenring is not the smartest idea ever, especially since at night we could have 1 or 2 star wolves gang up on us, which would not turn out well with ranged only because we have no way to fight all of them at once, I could get the wolf sight trinket, which allows me to have more bow skill and more pierce damage from getting a fenring trophy, so we stayed up here anyways. From that, while we didn't get the fenring trophy that we wanted, we did find not only the modder location, but also onion seeds, making pretty much everything I needed from this mountain there in one single spot. With the modder location and most of my silver smelted, I decided why not go ahead and just head for modder. I picked up my boat, began to prepare, and then realized that it's nighttime, it's storming, we could probably get a serpent, why not just go back from here? We started to head to modder, we did find a serpent during a storm, and because modder was fairly close to altar, within that same day that we headed out, or within the next morning, we arrived at the base of the modder mountain in the plains. When I realized one of the stupidest mistakes I've made in the playthrough, I picked up my boat with my dragon eggs in it, and then put it back down, and then sailed here without the dragon eggs. So now I really have to hope that there's 3 dragon eggs on top of this mountain, or else I'm going to have to resail that entire journey again, go to another nearby mountain, or wait for eggs to respawn, which none of those are things that I wanted to do, planned to do, or should have to do. But yeah, quick mistake. So we're gonna hope that that doesn't delay us too much. Though we made an extremely stupid mistake, luckily for us, there was 1, 2, 3 dragon eggs on top of this mountain. Now, there was exactly 3. There was not a 1 more that I found on the entire mountain, which is really lucky that we had the 3 that we needed, as plenty of times I've gotten stuck with that where I have to sail a second time all the way back from base, which for you guys is just a cut, but for those of you who were there on stream, you realize it's like an hour or 2 of not only my lives, but your guys's, where we do get to talk and hang out, but definitely it takes a long time. That does leave us, though, with pretty much only 1 more thing, which is to go grab some obsidian from this mountain, use some wood and feathers back at base, make us some obsidian arrows, move our portal close to modder, and we are ready to go. Now, if it seems like we've been going fast up to this point, we kind of have been, but also you guys gotta remember, we skipped the only boss that is not made to really be fought with a bow before now. So really, after modder is when things are going to start to get a lot more difficult, and where we have to take a new skip that I have never tried to do, and of course we're trying it in a ranged only permadeath, so I'm a little scared for it, but the way that we need to fight Yagluth, the things we need to fight Yagluth, are going to be insanely difficult. But what I have to do first is make it through a modder fight, because if you guys don't know, this is where my last permadeath run ended, and I'm really hoping it's not where it ends today. lucky for us on this specific permadeath, Modder is meant to be fought with a bow. Now normally I actually go the opposite way and I do it with a ton of melee and wait for Modder to land for most of it, but really most people fight Modder with a bow, so this should not be hard for us. The idea is we will just stay away from her when she's on the ground, use our high bow skill when she's in the air and on the ground, which at this point is getting quite high, and just try not to get hit too much. But even then we've got decent armor and we've got decent food, so I'm not even too worried about getting hit. As long as this stupid ice missile attack from the sky doesn't end another permadeath of mine, I will be okay. That being said though, my bow skill is getting a lot higher, especially a lot higher for only being at Modder. Most Modder fights, most people do not have this high of bow skill, and it especially helps that we're in a permadeath, which means we haven't died and lost any of our skill, which means our draw speed is ridiculously fast. Now it can be faster, right? We could have more, but realistically this is going to make this a lot easier. With Modder on the ground and with the way that the area around us is set up, I think the main goal is going to be to keep her around her own spawn altar as much as I can while she's on the ground, use the hillside to our advantage while she is shooting the ice breath down, and again, just try and put in as much DPS as I can. And if it really comes down to it, if we start to run out of arrows, we can use our spear and just throw it, and also if our bow breaks, I brought it back up. So either way, I feel like we prepped pretty well for this fight. As much as I would like to be dramatic and say this was an insane, harrowing fight, it just wasn't. Modder got stuck a good couple times, and while she did hit me also a good couple times, actually doing a decent amount of damage that did scare me a little bit, with that same ice breath attack that ended my last permadeath, with Modder just constantly landing far away from me, there was just not much that she was going to be able to do. Now, she did test my skills a little bit and get up close where I had to use some dodges, but realistically this was a really easy fight, and out of all of the mid to late game bosses, Modder is the least likely to be one of my problems. But now comes the start of a plan that I didn't even know I was going to have during this playthrough, and still at this point technically didn't know, for how I was going to kill Yagluth. So if you guys don't know, Yagluth is very resistant to Pierce, meaning Yagluth only takes 25% damage from Pierce. That, combined with the fact that bosses heal quite a bit, is going to be a bit of a problem. So we're going to need to either use a ton of frost arrows or a couple of different methods to get through Yagluth. And I promise the one I went for was not one that I had planned at the beginning of the playthrough, but it's one that I might have to think about in future playthroughs as a possible progression skip, especially for challenges because it worked so well. That progression skip will have to wait just a little bit though, and will evolve as we get through the playthrough, but for right now we have a decent sized plains that not only has some starter stuff for us, but has our first village. And this village had me realizing how ridiculously overpowered I was with the bow at this high skill level. Now again, I'm not at a ridiculously high skill level, I just hit 49 in this village, but being at around 50 is not normally how high I get unless I am in a very, very long playthrough, so we are doing a ton of damage. Not to mention I'm also used to playing on some more difficult settings from time to time, but being able to stagger berserkers and then kill them within like 5 arrows is something absolutely amazing. And while this first village isn't everything that we'll need, it is all of our starter crops as well as a decent amount of starter black metal that we can boat back whenever we want. The rest of stream though, I spent a decent amount of time building the second layer to our base, and while it won't be fully done just yet, and I don't know exactly how I'll organize everything just yet, it is going to be something that I want for the vision of the base, and I want to do it now because we have all of these beautiful stone pillars that we can get our nice satisfying breaks on all around us. We can do all that now. We can get all the stone. We can hang out at the end of stream after a nice boss fight, and tomorrow we can start to progress into the plains a lot further, start to get some better food, maybe get a bit of a plains farm set up, and look for the Yagluth stone. As before we do anything like the progression skip that I want to go towards that involves a decent amount of Mistlands progression as well, we're gonna need the Yagluth location, because I don't really want to go exploring all over the map if I could be doing that while also moving towards where I need to be going. Now, the next day when I hopped on, I was a little bit in the building mood, and while that's not necessarily a bad thing, it will influence probably a couple of our decisions. The first one being, we're going to drop the Modder trophy at altar, grab the buff, and start sailing, because the plains we were just at getting our first little bit of plain stuff is pretty much out of resources and stuff for us to explore. Heading to the next plains, I was not only looking for one that had a decent amount more plains resources, but also one that had a decent amount of stone pillars, as that would be, you know, if I'm in the building mood, I'm gonna need stone. But I also got some locksmith meat, I got some lox hide, we got some tar, broke many stone pillars for the purpose of building our base, and while I was heading back to our boat to drop off our portal nearby, I realized that we had unlocked the bog witch. From this entire journey so far, we have about 90 black metal, and I figured I could also probably go over to the bog witch and grab some iron from that nearby swamp before heading back, as I'd need both. So let's head over to the bog witch, let's get some iron, let's get it in the boat, and let's get all of this stuff from this journey back to base, and start prepping more to explore for things like Yagaloth. Because I was able to get a decent amount of iron over here, and because our boat was fairly far away, I decided why not just head around the island with the boat, because there was a shore on the other side of the bog witch that would make it much easier for us to get our iron to our boat. At least I thought, but this ended up being a ridiculous journey. We went out, we found Hildur, and this journey took us all the way out to the Mistlands. This journey probably wasted an hour to an hour and a half of my sailing time, just because I didn't understand the shape or the sheer size of this ridiculously shaped island, and I thought that I would be saving myself like 2 minutes, which this was definitely not worth it, except for the fact that I found an infested mine, which does open up the idea that I had previously had. So one of the progression skip ideas that I had was to get a spine snap to fight Yagaloth with. That is because it has spirit damage, and that combined with frost arrows would do just a good bit more than having the Draugr with frost arrows. However, it also started to cross my mind that if I had all of the stuff to build the spine snap, that I could probably also get all of the stuff to make magic weapons, including not only a staff of protection, but also a staff of frost that would allow me to not only do frost damage via a spine snap, but also through some magical weapons. But if I actually wanted to do that, which we'll consider it here in a little bit after we get this metal back to base, that would mean that we would have to do most of the Mistlands progression without a wisp and without ever killing Yagaloth in our plains armor, which would be quite a bit more dangerous than normal, especially for what I would normally do inside of a permadeath run. And though this journey might not be going the exact way that I expected, that's okay. We're gonna go ahead and leave a portal up here by our Mistlands and still make sure that we get some progress out of this. And honestly, it might be time to take some of my own advice that I used for No Map, which is sometimes you have to get lost to find exactly what you need in the world, and for Valheim, that is very much true. I didn't mean to go get lost, but I found the one thing that would maybe allow us to do our progression skip that I didn't even know if was going to be possible. After getting back to the bog witch, I still have a bit of iron to go through, a bit to load up, and there was another plains over here that I wanted to look around and see if I could find what I needed. We will likely leave a portal over here as well, not just for the bog witch, but also for us to farm some plain stuff. And alongside the bog witch and our giant swamp that we have, we also had 2 more villages that we were able to go through, which I might as well throw the black metal on the boat since the boat is still here. These villages also got us all of our totems and a bit more crops for us to plant later, which means we are pretty much set at this point. But we have a ton of iron, we have a ton of black metal on the boat, and hopefully we will have a bit more structured and safe journey back to base this time, because while that last one got us a ton of great progress, I do not want to spend that much time sailing again. Upon arriving back to base, I had one of the biggest problems that I had thought about for the entire series pretty much solved instantly just because of pure luck, and it's one of the biggest things that I think might allow me to get to the end of this series without too much struggle for resources. Well, hello, sir. Alright, goodbye, sir. Alright, holy shit. As we've learned, there are way too many birds on this island for some reason. I don't know what's up with the birds. The birds is a little bit ridiculous, man. I don't really know what be happening over here that's making this happen, but it's kind of awesome. I feel like we can just stand here and farm real quick. What is happening? What is happening right now? Bro, I don't know what's happening. I feel like that's plenty of feathers for now. You know, stand up there for the first hour of the day, end up with more than a stack of feathers. Yep. And that's exactly what happened. I got over a stack of feathers from literally just standing out there for a few minutes, which is something ridiculous. Now, why this is happening, I think I know, but I don't know if it's anything that I ever really tried to plan with this base. I think it just happened, but it may be something that you could look at in the future. I think because there is so much black forest and swamp over here that is technically underwater, it kind of counts as a shoreline, which I think the birds spawn next to. Now, that is not at all confirmed, but that is the only thing that I could possibly think of, and as I started to later in the series spawn block parts like that island to stop raids from coming, I realized that the birds were not spawning nearly as much, even as far as when I was spawn blocking the swamp island that was a little further away. So I think the important thing is an area of shore or like water area that's not ocean that is not spawn blocked. I think that is how you end up with this many birds, but I'm not necessarily sure. Either way though, for the ranged only series, we literally could not have gotten it to happen in a better series, which means we are going to have pretty much our feather problems for all of our arrows solved for the rest of the playthrough, leaving us with really the only biggest pain in the butt being that we are going to need a ridiculous amount of frost glands. One of the other things that I did end up with from that journey was enough stuff for an Abyssal Harpoon, which is a ranged weapon that can kind of replace my spear, and it's just fun to have, as we do have a few ways we can use it. I then spent the rest of the entire stream putting Rockies all over our base, because we still have all of them from that Rocky POI that we found earlier in the series, and honestly I wanted to name them for the people that were doing super chats and gifted subs, and everybody that was hanging out in chat, because what fun would it be if I named all of them myself, which is just a reminder that if you guys want to participate in that kind of stuff while we're doing it on stream, to come join us on stream. If you guys want to see the stream schedule, it is in the Discord in the description. Go hop in there. We got a bunch of cool people to hang out with, and we also have a bunch of information about stuff like that. But we spent pretty much an hour or two decorating. We have a bunch of the base decorated now, and we've got a little bit more to do, but honestly, I'm pretty happy with the base so far, which is good because tomorrow we're going to be pushing a progression that if we lose the series, this will be the last memory that we have of the base. So at least we got everybody's Rocky down before anything bad happens. Now, while I decorate the base, which is something that I will still spend a lot of time doing today, I need to also have other things going. I need to get our plains farm going, as if we want to do this Mistlands progression skip, we're going to need decent food. We also need the flax for padded armor, because I'm definitely not going into the Mistlands with silver. But while doing that, we will hang out around the base, we will wait for the stuff to grow, we will smelt metal up, and we will build the base, and we'll just do all of those things kind of in tandem. Now, while building the base, we got another raid, and some trolls did actually spawn on that little island nearby, which tells me that I will probably have to spawn block it. But besides that, it was build the base, wait for the crops to grow, and keep smelting the metal. Now, after a while of doing that, when the base was almost done and I was still waiting for crops to grow but no more metal to smelt, I just wanted to go out and look for the aglet stone for a little bit longer, just to see if I could have any luck, because that is one of the only things right now that is stopping me from killing Yagluth and wanting to do the entire progression skip, is knowing where the boss is at. And it did take me about 30 to 45 minutes, but I did, after a couple fake Stonehenges full of berserkers and no helpful stones, I did finally find exactly what we were looking for. So now it's time to see, not only where is Yagluth, but is it going to be close enough for us to also explore Mistlands nearby for the other parts of our progression. Oh shit. Oh my god, we got it. Let's go. There's our stone. There's our stone right there. That was good timing. Nice, close by too. Now, this Yagluth is not only nearby us where our Mistlands is at, which means we will probably be able to go over to that island, explore some Mistlands, and put a portal down for Yagluth, but it's also fairly close to one of the bone masses, which is also really good for us, because with the Frost Staff and the Frost Arrows and a Spine Snap, we should also be able to take out bone mass alongside Yagluth, and the wolf raid that we are avoiding bone mass for only really applies to the mountains and the plains when you are away from a base, which we shouldn't have too much of once we are halfway through the Mistlands. Waiting for crops and metal, I finally finished what would be the main base for now. Now, we'll probably expand this quite a bit more. This is not my full vision of what I'd like this base to be, but for right now, I really do like it. All of the levels work. We have enough room for everything. We have nice little core wood design on the outside, and we've got plenty of outside room. I have an idea for how to get our crops and stuff here, but for right now, we're still growing them near altar. And for the time being, I think this is going to have to work. So we are now going to shift focus from building to just gear. I need all of my flax harvested, replanted, as well as my barley, and starting to be turned into linen thread via the spinning wheel, which we will have a couple of once we get the nails and stuff smelted up for it. We're going to head up to the mountain and get obsidian and frost glands for a bunch of frost arrows, as that is the best arrow to use in the Mistlands, and it is just really good because it slows other things down as well. And we're going to start cleaning out some of our old gear. I'm making an executive decision. We don't need that anymore. It wasn't just our spear though, we now have our harpoon in that slot, we have our Draugr fully upgraded alongside our padded gear, 200 frost arrows, and a hunter's bow to match in case we start to run out of durability or in case we run into a situational position where we need to be using the hunter's bow instead of our Draugr. But we now have our padded armor made up, we have all the gear that I would like to go to the Mistlands with, and I think it might be almost time for us to skip the plains almost completely and head up to the Mistlands with our frost arrows and see if we can get a Black Forge, as well as an entire magic setup before we ever go fight Yagluth. The last little bit of prep, besides doing our armor and stuff, was getting a food prep table made, taking a trip to the swamp to not only grab a bunch of cores for portals, but also to find a serpent on the way back, which allows us to make a bit better food for our Mistlands run, which, trust me, we are going to need every bit of it we can get. We then headed back through the mist portal, and it is time to take on a mist dungeon that we so luckily found on a journey we never wanted to take. No, 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 no. No, get in the water, get in the water. Okay. That one just explode full dead? Okay, it's in the water. It can't fly out of the water. Nice. Okay, now what the hell was that spawn? Now, apparently the game really did not like that we were able to come to this dungeon, because not only were there 4 Seekers outside of the dungeon, but it also spawned a Seeker Soldier outside right as those ones died, which is just a problem. The only thing that Valheim did me a solid for here was it also spawned a Diverger that was able to mostly take down the Seeker Soldier, which made it actually not too bad. But we have some carpets, we have some basic Mistlands gear, and hopefully this dungeon has everything we need, otherwise we are going to have to go through a bunch of these, and the less of these we have to go through, the less chance we have of dying. Luckily, once we were in, it actually does seem like we are going to be almost overpowered with the frost arrows and our bow skill with the Draugr. It seems like we're going to be pretty fine for most of this. The scary part, though, is how confined of a space we are in, just because of things like ticks and stuff like that that constantly want to jump on us. If we miss our shot, it could mean really bad things for us. But somebody in chat did suggest that I go back and make a different weapon. Somebody suggested that I go back and make ooze bombs, which is a ranged weapon, and honestly is something that I could have been using this whole time. And the big thing for this is you can throw it and it will damage things through walls, almost how you would use a stag breaker or a demolisher in one of these, which means that we can kill most of the ticks, seekers, and any big groups of things before they ever even get to us, which while it won't fix all of our problems, it will fix a lot of them. So we shall keep working our way through this, but we now have some ooze bombs to use sparingly, not only for this dungeon, but we should probably be using these a lot more often than even just this playthrough. In the first secret room of the mine, which there was not many of, trust me, we found 1 black core. Now, this entire mine was mostly just empty hallways full of random crap, and while I did get a bunch of seeker meat, carpus, and stuff for some major healing meads, we did not get more than that 1 black core, which means if we want any amount of Mistlands progression, we are going to need to go to a new Mistlands. And like I said earlier when I was looking for Yagluth, what better place to go to look for a new Mistlands than the island that we are already planning to go to? So we're going to head over to Yagluth, kind of in the direction that we got here in, where we came around this island the very first time. We'll try and catch any mist hairs or anything like that on our way there. We'll try and grab Idrizo wood because we have our black metal axe, and we'll try and get some other small progression pieces, but truly our progression will not start until we have at least 5 black cores. Heading over to the Yagluth Island, there is a Mistlands over here, and it is big enough to look promising. Now, I could kind of see this while I was sailing previously, but it was foggy for most of that journey, so I didn't really get an idea of how big this was. And sailing by it, I could see already in the distance another rock formation that seemed to be an infested mine. The problem was, the shore was much more chaotic than previous. While the last one had Divergers fighting a Seeker Soldier that spawned in the last minute, this one had an entire Diverger settlement on a dock that had a yawl floating right at water level, absolutely destroying them, along with the stuff that was actually in the mist. And that's the other problem about this one. Previously, we got lucky with one that was not in the mist, which makes it much safer for us without a wisp light. This one is completely in the mist, meaning while we are fighting those seekers, and while we are over here at all, we are constantly in danger of stuff sneaking up on us that we cannot see. Before long though, me and the Divergers had taken down the Yawl, and the sounds from all of the fighting that had been going on down here attracted the Seekers from the mine, which was actually probably ideal, because not only would I not have to fight them in nearly as much mist, but I could also have the Divergers help. However, this Mistlands was much more active than the last one. Not only was there a Yawl when we showed up, as well as this mine, but there were more Yawl inland, and there was also another Diverger camp, and this was not the last one we'd find. But the goal is to just kind of clear this area out, make it a little bit safe in case we need to exit the mine for something like an emergency, like something's about to kill us. That way we don't get killed as soon as we come out, and I'd also like to be able to put my portal down outside. But I will say, once we are done with this mine, if we get everything that we need for our magic progression to start, that Diverger structure over there does have a chance of having a Jotun skull in it, and it could be a really good starting point for us. Compared to the last mine that we had gone through, this one was a complete gold mine. Not only did we have a decent amount of Sealbreaker fragments in the first room, but we also had access to a secret room after not fighting too many things, and the secret room contained 2 more black cores, meaning we only needed 2 more with the one we had back at base to make our quota and start our magic stuff. But I will say, the bottom room was absolutely packed with things that I needed to kill. There was not 1, not 2, but 3 Seeker soldiers down there, along with a ton of ticks, a ton of regular Seekers, and just so much stuff that wanted to kill us. After doing a decent amount of damage on them and almost breaking my bow, it was time to head back to base for the night to get a little bit more supplies, and on my way out I took out the Yawl that was scaring us on the way in. But coming back the next day, we cleared the rest of the stuff, including the 2-star ticks, the rest of the soldiers, and a bunch of other terrifying stuff, found some more Sealbreaker fragments and black cores, meaning we now have enough to build our black forge, we have a decent amount of our Sealbreaker, and this means that not only will we be able to press magic, but we're not that far away from being able to press queen once we get some of our gear built up. With our black forge and the cores that we have worked so hard for, we now have to hit the other parts of this progression skip that I've been so scared of this entire time, because the danger is not over yet. Now luckily when we got down to the Diverger mine, most of them had been cleared out by the Yawl, but I still wanted to use something else to get rid of the ward, just in case there were some more lurking around. There is a Seeker nearby, and I could use it to break the Diverger extractor box and the ward itself. However, that would be extremely dangerous, but I had to do it anyways, otherwise I would have to spend a bunch more time going to get something else to do it. And even though I got hit a few times, we did not end our playthrough here. We got the Seeker to break it, we got rid of the Seeker, and we are able to start mining out this Jotun skull. Except for one thing, we don't have a black metal pickaxe. So we're going to head back to base, get some more black metal smelting, and also go pick up just a little bit more iron for a couple of other things that we need to make, and we should be able to come back here in the next day or two and grab all of this soft tissue, set up a sap tap with that extractor, and start making our spine snap and some of our magic stuff. When I got back from my iron run, the black metal was smelted, and I could quickly make our black metal pickaxe so that way tomorrow we can go grab our soft tissue. But also, to make another Mistlands journey, I'm going to need a bit of food, so we're going to cook that up as well. Alongside the topic of food, that iron, at least the first idea of why I had to go get it, was so that I could make a pots and pans, because that was something that I had not yet made, and that is something that we are going to need if we want a fully upgraded cauldron, at least for the time being, so we can make our best food possible. Really, this playthrough I've been being a tiny bit irresponsible with not eating the right food, and I need to probably fix that about now. We also started collecting iron in the Mistlands, with a future plan to smelt black metal here for our Diverger extractors. You see, if I don't have to go all the way back to base to get black metal and iron to set up a small base here, that will save us a lot of time and also make it so that we have to spend less time sailing around, wasting food, and being in the Mistlands when we don't have to be, which all of those things reduce our chance of death. But we also did a bit more exploring, found some more Diverger camps nearby that we will probably come back to later, but for right now they are absolutely packed with Divergers, and I really do not feel like making them upset. So now the journey begins, and I promise you guys it's a long process for us to be able to get from where we're at right now to having full magic stuff, but we are really close on the path. First of all, we're going to start smelting up the iron we got from that sword, because what it allows us to do is make a blast furnace here in a little bit when we have black metal for not only our extractors, but also our I2 refinery and our Yalder table, which we will probably build over here. But while that's smelting, I'm going to break into this Jotun skull, see how much soft tissue I can get, and kind of make a quick little plan for when we go to the nearby plains that also contains Yagluth to start grabbing black metal, so that way I know how much I need, and that way I don't spend too much time over there, because again, any time spent in a biome that is fairly dangerous is probably a good way to get myself killed for a stupid reason. Because of the way this skull was structured, it took me a long time to get all the soft tissue, but we have 60, which is very, very solid and definitely enough for a spine snap and some basic magic. But with that, it is now time to head to get our black metal and also check out this plains near Yagluth. Now, coming up on the shore, right away I could tell that first of all, Yagluth is visible and seems to be in an okay spot, but there are a lot of tar pits and villages around it, so I figured why not at least clear one of the villages and also just get my black metal at the same time. And honestly, I ripped through the village insanely fast. These frost arrows are going to be the key to our success, no matter how much of a pain in the butt they are to make. And after literally just a few in-game hours here, we were able to get our 15 black metal, which is enough for an extractor, and also to build the alder table. And if we break down the alder table or put it back at base, we can make up to 3 extractors, which is pretty solid. And this is really close, so if we end up needing more, we can just come right back. But for right now, let's head back to base, and let's start our final prep and building our final weapons to come fight Yagluth with magic. The plan that felt like I was rushing was honestly going pretty well to plan, and for a really dangerous progression skip, this was going really nicely. But do not forget, the Yagluth fight has ended me in many a runs, whether it be a permadeath or just a regular playthrough. We have lost a lot of characters to Yagluth. But pretty quickly, our blast furnace put out black metal, our black metal was turned into a sap extractor, and our sap extractor started producing sap for our new ITER refinery. And after the first batch was done, we broke it and put down the alder table, as well as the black forge to start getting our recipes unlocked. And with that first batch of ITER and a bit of fine wood and bones, we can now make our spine snap, which is really the only thing that we came here for originally. But now, because we're so far in it and because I want to do it anyways, why not go ahead and make some magic to go with it? Because there's nothing we could do better to save ourselves from a dangerous boss fight like Yagluth than build up more than we probably need to. And that's probably going to help us, considering that Bone Mass and Queen are not too far behind Yagluth. Since I'm planning to use magic, not only am I going to need great food for the boss fight just because it's a boss fight, but I will also need magic food. So we're going to plant a small farm, not just of magic food, but also of Jotun Puffs. So that way, hopefully by the time we're ready for the fight, we will be able to make a decent amount of Mistlands level food, which will just further increase our gain over Yagluth. It was also not very long before we moved the Black Forge as well as the Alder Table, crafting back to base, and spent a decent amount of time building the upgrades for the Black Forge so that I could upgrade my Spine Snap just to get that little bit of extra damage. Now, of course, whenever we want to do ITER refining, we're going to have to bring it back over to this other area because I don't want our base getting destroyed, but that will not be too often as we don't have that many more sets of ITER to go through. In the meantime, we will be harvesting up food, not just the Mistlands, but also going out to hunt stuff. We got both of our staffs made because we spent a decent amount of time waiting, getting Yggdrasil wood, which means all we really have to do is cook up the food that we have that's raw, harvest our farms a few times, and get a bunch of frost arrows, and we will be ready to head to Yagluth. Now, like I said, Yagluth has been the pain, the thorn in my side, and it has killed me so many times in so many different types of runs. But if we have this type of magic, if we have the progression skip that was supposed to be the dangerous part down, you would hope Yagluth wouldn't be able to stop us. Now that we are at Yagluth, there's a few small things that we need to do, but we are almost ready. We need to clear the entire area, the tar pits, the villages, the death skeetos, and the locks. Absolutely clear everything, and while some of it will respawn, we're going to try and keep as much of it out as we can. We need to make sure that everything is repaired, eat our meads, eat our food, put the totems down, and hopefully not end our run with an extremely pierce-resistant boss that has ended many of my runs before. and Yagluth joins the rest of them on the altar. However, I cannot help but look at that empty bone mass stone, knowing that the raid probably wouldn't affect us at this point, and not just go over there and go finish it. So let's go get another boss fight started up. But on our way over there, let's talk about the Yagluth fight. It went extremely smoothly. The frost arrows and frost staff did a little bit more damage than I was expecting, because last time I did it with frost arrows, and the thing that I was remembering was a different difficulty. Not to mention the frost staff and the spine snap, like I said, added a lot to the damage. And we have an insanely high bow skill compared to when I would normally ever try this, which is really a big difference, and it's something that I'm so glad that I tried to spend time doing in the beginning. Now, obviously I didn't get much of a choice because we didn't have that many options, but I'm glad I didn't go with a ranged spear or anything like that because the high bow skill is absolutely amazing. I also learned a little bit about how magic and stam regen while you're fighting, but I still have a little bit more to learn because magic is still kind of new to me. However, they do not always just regen, even if you're not attacking with a weapon that uses it, which makes it a little interesting, and it makes it a little harder so you can't just swap between weapons. But that being said, the Yagluth fight went extremely well. We only had to use one fire resistance, meaning we saved the rest for either the Mistlands or the Ashlands, and let's knock down this giant mass of bones real quick so we can get through our first 5 bosses and move on to the 2 that are much more likely to kill me. And honestly, I would try and make the Bone Mass fight just as awesome as the Yagluth fight, but there's just no possible way. These Frost Arrows, the Spine Snap Spirit, burn damage, as well as the Frost Staff were just too strong for Bone Mass. And like I said, the main reason we've been avoiding it was because I just really don't like dealing with the Wolf Raid, and especially during this when I would not be able to, deal with them as a crowd, it'd be a little bit scary. So, we are way over prepped for this. We absolutely destroyed Bone Mass, and we can now say that on day 121, we have killed the first 5 bosses. And also at this point, we have done most of the Mistlands progression that we will need to do. There are still a few things that I want to make, and we still need to find Queen and build our Sealbreaker, but quite honestly, the last chapter of this is upon us. These last 2 biomes will be extremely difficult and challenge us in a lot of different ways, but it will also give us a lot of new tools. So, let's go back to base, let's start to prep a few things, and let's look at what tools we're going to make, as well as where we're going to go next. Now, obviously, we have to put the Bone Mass trophy on the altar, even though we probably will not take its power for right now. And after both of these bosses, I wanted to add a little bit to the base, because as I said, if we get all the way through this playthrough, there's no reason we can't keep going and building awesome stuff, so why not put a little bit of time in now, especially since I have literally the ideal situation. We have a free Yagluth altar that we can break down for stone, which gave us, a lot of stone. And I know you guys think, yeah, obviously did. No. I'm talking, stacks on stacks on stacks. There we had so much stone. It was a ridiculous amount of stone. I didn't even have the room to stack up the stone, nor did I have enough room to put it in chests. However, that being said, we did get to add a decent amount of the bottom layer to the base, and even though it took about an hour or 2, that is okay, as it was a good break after all of those boss fights, and it will allow us to think about how we want to do our move into the Mistlands. Now, I've got a few plans for what extra weapons we'll have to make, as well as what things we will prepare for the Ashlands, but for right now, all we did was a little bit of prep, got some food, got some more frost arrows, and we were headed out to look for more mines, because until I know where Queen's at, and until I have my Sealbreaker, there's not that much else that I'd like to farm, because the weapons don't matter if I don't know where the boss is. Pretty quickly in our journey, I was barely able to spot what looked like a mine deeper into this Mistlands, and upon looking closer, I was absolutely correct, which hopefully this one will give us everything that we need, but even if it can just give us a few more black cores to make our manufacturing and crafting process a little bit easier, that would be nice. And we also have a diverger structure over here, which means if I want to come over here and grab another extractor to speed up our sap stuff, we can totally do that too. Right away, this mine had the best and worst of both worlds. We had 2 star ticks, but also what looked like a very big dungeon with a Sealbreaker fragment and a black core in the very first room. I wanted to go back to my boat real quick just to put a few things away when I realized I didn't bring a portal, which is okay because portals for PermaDeath lose part of their importance, but that does mean that if we need rested, if we need to repair anything, or if anything starts to go wrong, we really can't run from it. Now, there's no risk of putting one down in case we die, because if we die, the series is over, but we still have to be very careful now, because if anything breaks, if I lose my rested, and if I start to run out of food, we have to have enough stuff to still get us all the way back to our nearest portal, meaning we have to clear this thing kind of quickly, so I'm going to try and speed through it a little bit, and hopefully that speeding through does not make me get killed. Right off rip, I found one of the most important things that I could have possibly found. We found the Queen location in the bottom of a pit, And the good news is not only is it the Queen location, but that the Queen location is very, very close to us and literally right behind, or even possibly on the same island as Yagloth, which is really nice. However, this mine was not done handing us 2-star enemies, but also not done handing us cores and Sealbreaker fragments. We stacked up a lot of both. We dealt with 2-star Seekers and 2-star Ticks, but because of me bringing no portal, I had to leave this dungeon pretty quickly and kind of speed clear it, hoping I didn't miss anything, as we are already headed back to base because I only have 1 Iter food left. My nearest portal's in the Mistlands, and when I get there, I don't just want to instantly die to not having any food. So now that we have found Queen, we are on a journey for a few small things before we go. We still need our Sealbreaker, though we have most of the fragments. We still need a ton more refined Iter, and we still need a bunch of upgrades on our weapons as well as the Carpus gear. Now to start, I wanted to start with a decent sized Mistlands farm that was just for sap, and we can end up growing more crops here later if we need. But to match it, we needed soft tissue, and I went about that in 2 different ways. The main way, and the way that I will use first, was using Diverger structures, using refined Iter to break the crates, and then grabbing the soft tissue from those crates. However, later, after we had already found enough soft tissue from doing that, we also found a skull that was partially inside of a rock and decided that, okay, we'll mark it, and if we need it later, we will come back. But the other thing that we need greatly for all of our staff upgrades and our fire staff, which we are also going to make by the time we get to Queen, is we need so much Yggdrasil wood, because all of the staffs take it and we need just an absolute ton of it. So that's probably going to be most of our grind process while we wait for the sap to make and while we wait for the sap and soft tissue to process into Iter. I did have one extremely dangerous moment while gathering this wood, which you would think is not that dangerous of a task, but in the Mistlands, you guys know how it can be. I had a yawl come up over a cliffside while I was completely out of stam, push me into a spot where I had no idea where I was going, and there happened to be Seekers there. Now luckily we got out of it, but we need to be moving a little bit more carefully. Luckily though, from our wood gathering journey and from waiting for our sap, we now have a staff of embers, we have upgraded a little bit of stuff, and we have a little bit better gear, so I think it's time to start heading towards Queen. Now we still have some things to make, we still have a bunch of prep, and we still need the Sealbreaker fragments, but I think that this journey on the way over there will mostly be around Mistlands, and the Queen is definitely in a Mistlands, meaning we probably have a good chance to find another mine, and I don't think we could have gotten a more beautifully obvious mine than the one we found on the way there. Now, this was my first ever time using one of these fire staffs for combat during one of these playthroughs, which was kind of cool, and it does kind of work for me, though I feel like I don't need enough Iter food for it, and then I probably have too much health and stam food. But that being said, this dungeon had not 1, but 2 Sealbreaker fragments, leaving us with 6 total so far, meaning if the next mine we run across, hopefully near Queen, has 3 more, we don't have to go anywhere else, we can focus on getting our gear upgraded, making our Carpus gear, and getting our staffs fully to where they need to be at for the fight, and we can just leave a portal over there and go whenever we're ready, which is what I really hope to do next. A really big part of the prep for the Queen fight was not only the magic stuff, but also the frost arrows, so I headed back to our ginormous mountain to grab some frost arrows when I finally got reminded of why I never wanted to kill Bone Mass, and why I always skip it in his playthroughs. We got the You Are Being Hunted raid, which honestly at this point in time shouldn't really be that much of a problem, but because I didn't really have arrows and my Iter regen is not at the best, I decided to just leave for now, and we'll go back up there and deal with that later if they're even still there. But we did get enough stuff for some more frost arrows, and we will be going back to the Mistlands in just a second. But I just thought it was important to show. That is why we do not like killing Bone Mass, especially in PermaDeath playthroughs, because if you come unprepared, you might be in trouble. But with our frost arrows to at least get us through some more dungeons, though it might not get us through the Queen fight, we headed back out towards Queen to look for more Sealbreaker fragments, and we found a dungeon pretty quickly. This first dungeon had 1 Sealbreaker fragment, which really kind of felt like a dud, but when I go back to thinking about it, it is true that we needed all 9, and whether we got 1 at a time in 9 different dungeons or all of them from the same one, at least we got progress from this one, as we very easily could have gotten none. Unfortunately for us though, that single one and a few black cores was all that we were left with for our efforts, and we are back to searching for more. Almost arriving at Queen, we found 1 more dungeon with the hope that if we cleared the outside, got in there, that we might be able to find our last 2 Sealbreaker fragments, and right inside the doorway was one of them, meaning we only have 1 left. But after fighting pretty deep into the dungeon, going through many secret rooms and not really seeing anything, I was honestly kind of losing hope that we might be able to get it from this, and thinking that we may be on an infinite chase for our last Sealbreaker fragment, which is really the last thing you want in one of these playthroughs, or any playthrough at all. But at the end of one of the big rooms, just sitting in a hallway, we found our last Sealbreaker fragment, and while this mine had plenty more stuff to offer, like black cores, seeker meat, and Carpus for our gear, this was the main thing that we needed, which means we can now focus on some gear upgrades, leave that portal at Queen, Queen and get ready for the fight, which I am slightly worried about because Queen I normally fight from a very, very close range perspective, and ranged only is going to be one of my biggest weaknesses on this fight. With all 9 fragments of our seal breaker, we now just need to switch our focus to gear, food, and ammo. If we have all of those things done, we have that portal fairly close to Queen that we can move closer whenever we're ready, and we are about ready to go. But the biggest thing that I realized I was running out of was refined Iter. So I headed back over to that skull buried in the rock from earlier, as well as it's right next to our sap farm, to harvest up some soft tissue and sap to turn into Iter. This Iter was not only enough for some upgrades, but also some very much needed new armor. We were able to make a full set of Carpus gear with some upgrades, as well as start to upgrade some of our staffs, which we probably won't upgrade it all the way because not all of them really seem worth it to me, but any of them that we can, there's no reason not to. So we'll need to make some frost arrows, we'll still need to make some food, but a lot of our gear, while it's not fully upgraded to the max, is in a spot where I'm fairly comfortable with using it for the fight. For the remaining upgrades, as well as just some extra Iter that we will probably need in the Ashlands, assuming we make it there, we headed to the Queen Mistlands to grab some Diverger crates and stuff like that, and also look for skulls, but most of them came from Diverger crates. With more soft tissue, we headed up to the mountains to grab a bunch more stuff for a bunch more frost arrows, as we had a few earlier, but we will need an absolute ton for the fight. We got our food cooked up, both actually the best food we could make, and some backup food for the Ashlands, and for if this doesn't go like I planned, or goes longer than I planned. And with that, hopefully the swarm does not overtake us with ranged only inside the Queen fight.
just like that, we are on to the Ashlands. Now, the queen fight did teach me something that I'm a little afraid of. The amount of stuff that swarms me, the amount of stuff that tries to get up in my face is kind of a problem, because I know the Ashlands is 100 times worse than the queen fight could ever be. But the other thing that I learned is that I need to be bringing ooze bombs to this fight for the rest of the time that I play the game. Not just in this playthrough, but in all of them. But yes, that swarm of things running up to me, that swarm of things trying to attack me, and getting in a big group where you can't really do a bunch of damage to everything around you because you can't just swing a sword is actually going to be a real problem when we get to the Ashlands. But we'll worry about that when we get there, so let's get our Drakkar down and let's get over to the Ashlands. When putting my Drakkar down, of course we're happy that we got the Drakkar, but I'm also happy because I found out that I had serpent meat in my boat this whole time, which would have provided me with better food for a lot of situations that I needed it. I also headed into a nearby mine and found one of the weirdest glitches that I have ever seen in Valheim. I have no idea why this happened or what was happening, but I've never seen it happen, so if you guys have, let me know. But we are headed to the Ashlands at last, so let's hope we get a good landing. The sail to the Ashlands was honestly really nice, and I headed for a high spot, or what looked like a high spot from really far away, as the last time I did that it worked out really well for me. The idea of these first runs is to find as many things as I can and mark them out. We found diverger structures, we found Morgan dens, and get all of our basic resources. We need vine berries, we need fiddleheads, we need aspen hide, we need Morgan sinew, and as many of those things as I can grab to get the recipes to start my planning for later, we will do. Now obviously we know most of the recipes, but also just having the stuff at base will help us a little bit. But we're just going to run as far as we can. We have a portal on the shore in case we need to get back, and we have one on us for if we get into danger, and we're gonna see what this entire island looks like.
No way.
Right on this first island that we landed, not too far from shore, we found the fodder spawner, which means we need the bells and a couple upgrades, but most of our stuff will stay the same. I'm planning on using the spine snap, I'm planning on using probably the frost staff, and we may use a couple of other things from the Ashlands, like the troll staff and the staff of the wilds, but quite honestly, this is really good news for us. And this is not the first time that me going for a really high spot in the Ashlands has landed me at the fodder location, so maybe there's some sort of pattern that isn't 100%, but could be determined to helping you find the boss location when you first land. But that being said, our luck didn't necessarily continue the way I thought it would. The reason my luck was not as good as I thought was I thought maybe we would just run through everything real fast and get through the Ashlands, making this a beautiful permadeath, quicker than our max raids one, which is my fastest permadeath ever. And in reality what happened is the back of the island was surrounded by ocean as well. We have no lava field that's containing anything, which means we have no access to flame metal, and we have no access to a charred fortress to get our bell fragments. Now my two options at this point were to either head all the way back to the boat and then pull it out and sail it around, or just to try and swim, which is a much more dangerous plan, but also could technically work a little bit quicker. While we did make it to a new island pretty easily with the swimming method, it was a little scary. And it was also a really small island, as I'm kind of on the edge of the map, and that's how the Ashlands works. So I need to keep going more inward, which means I'm going to have to keep swimming, and not all of them turned out as smooth as that first one.
What I was worried about. Oh yeah, see, we're stuck. This is what we don't want. This could be it. Oh no. That's what we don't want.
Quite honestly, in swimming that, I probably deserved to die, but I didn't, so we're okay. But we need to be very careful, and at this point I was like, I either need to find a really clear spot where I should easily be able to swim across to a very good island, or I need to go back and grab the boat. Because that was a little too stupid for not even getting to a new island. That was just trying to get back to our original one. When trying to swim back to my boat, I did actually find a bone maw, which is something that I wanted. Though I didn't know if I'd use the ash fang itself, having the option is always nice, but I do think we will stick to the spine snap for the fight, just because of the little bit of spirit damage, assuming fodder takes spirit damage. But we could also build the lightning ash fang, and use that as well, as it does the chain lightning, which is also a ton of damage. We'll consider that though as we get closer. For now, we need to go find our first fortresses, leave a portal over here, which we did, and we need to go see if we can get our bell fragments and how quickly this is going to let us progress. There's a chance we absolutely rip through the Ashlands in record time, but there's also a chance that the RNG just isn't there for us and that it takes us a while, which either one is okay. With that, though, we did not have to sail very far, but just far enough to where I wouldn't have been comfortable swimming. We fought another bone maw, and we landed on an island that looked like it had a lot more potential. There was much bigger lava fields, there was much more open space, and it looked like it went on for a lot further, which just gives us a better chance of finding good stuff. And pretty quickly, we found ourselves a charred fortress, but we also found ourselves in one of the most dangerous situations of the playthrough so far, and one that really showed why ranged only in a situation of the Ashlands was going to be a problem. It wasn't just the Charred, though, that wanted to get in on this fight. There was lava blobs and spawners everywhere that I was just trying to destroy so I could get into this Charred fortress. Oh, fuck. Just as quickly as it had began, our Ashlands run ended, ending our entire ranged-only permadeath, the furthest that I've ever made it into one of these and then lost it. And it hurt, because we almost made it out. The Askfin, even through the frost, was able to get its jump. I got out of the lava, ate a health potion, and instantly rolled to avoid a Twitcher. But unfortunately, I couldn't roll fast enough again, because the Askfin was jumping at the same time that I was already dodging the Twitcher, and the Askfin died to the frost residual after I died, meaning it didn't even kill me to live. It just killed me for the love of the game. But that being said, we made it super far in this permadeath. We do permadeaths like this all the time on stream, as well as a bunch of other fun challenges, so if you guys want to come stop by stream or see the VODs from this, they will be in the description below. Our Discord will be in the description below so you can see when I'm streaming. And though it was a sad time to lose the fight like this, we had a beautiful playthrough, we built a beautiful base, and I had a beautiful time with you guys on stream. Thank you guys so much for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.